Thank you, Ashley. It's my pleasure today to introduce somebody to the club that most all of you already know, as a former member here. Beth Crider, she's a native to Central Illinois, graduating from Dunlap High School. She went on to earn a teaching degree in early childhood education at Illinois State University. Upon graduating, she was hired as a first-year teacher at the brand new Valeska Hinton Early Childhood Education Center. During her tenure with the Peoria Public Schools, Beth taught pre-kindergarten, kindergarten, first grade, and special education for over 17 years. Beth attended Bradley University for graduate school, where she earned a master's degree in curriculum and instruction, then went on to complete additional work to earn a certificate in educational administration. She then joined the Peoria Regional Office of Education when Dr. Jerry Brookhart appointed her as the Assistant Regional Superintendent in 2011. With Dr. Brookhart's retirement in 2013, Beth was appointed by the Peoria County Board and has been serving as Regional Superintendent since January of 2014. Beth lives in Peoria with her husband, Brian Dunphy, who happens to be the Athletic Director of Peoria High School. Her daughter, Kate, teaches at Pleasant Valley here in Peoria County, and her daughter, Abby, and son-in-law, Troy, live in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And she puts down here, her dog is actually her favorite. So, that being said, please, warm welcome for Beth Crider.
Okay, be honest. Raise your hand if you actually know what a regional superintendent is. Okay, all right. That is not bad. That is not bad. That is not bad. Before I start my official remarks, if you don't know, you're not alone. I'm probably the least known elected position. So yes, this is an elected position. My office is actually at the Peoria County Courthouse until they build the new facility at, if you've noticed, they tore down the health department. So I'm moving in with the coroner and I'm moving in with the health department. My new office will be there and I cannot wait to get out of the courthouse because that's not really where an educational office belongs. So I am elected countywide, like the sheriff, like the coroner, like the state's attorney, and I consider it my job to keep students, educators, and community away from those three. So that's what I spend my time doing. And if you go to my website, peoriaroe.org, you will see a lot of information about my office if you're interested. But we serve about 25,000 students here, a little bit more than that in Peoria County, 18 school districts. And our mission is very simple, service. We serve students, educators, and the community through our programming. So some of the things that we do, we try to do our job to make their job easier. We do preschool for all. I have 4 classrooms. We do birth to 3 home visiting all over Peoria County. We do truancy prevention. We do homeless services. Education at the Peoria County Jail, our optional high school, which many of you know about, Peoria Regional Learning Center. We provide professional learning, safety, which after your moment of silence, we have a director of school safety. During the Q&A, if you want to know more about that, I'd be glad to share. And then we do compliance, health, life, safety, and literacy support, which I boss John Meisinger and Dave pulls around, which is no easy job. So they do that for us and are my champions. So thank you for having me back to the club. When I used to be a member, I didn't need cheaters. So I joined briefly back then when I was first elected, thinking, well, this is what elected people do, until I understood the daily demands of being an education administrator, and it's only gotten harder over the years. But during that time, I learned what a steadfast commitment that clubs like yours, that Rotaries have to children and to the welfare of our children, and for that I am eternally grateful. And one thing I like about this club, I know there's other Rotaries in town. Okay, but one thing I like about this club comes from a book I read called A New Kind of Diversity. So when I look across this club, I see all different ages and generations. The younger, the older, the medium, and everything in between. Now, I'm a curmudgeon old Gen Xer. Classic, born right in the middle of Gen X. I'm a class of 1989 at Dunlap High School. We wanted our motto to be whatever. I mean, honestly, we wanted that put on our graduation announcement. And I bring that up because it'll be important to my remarks, because as I reflect back on my tenure, as I head down the road to retirement, If you want to know how many months and days, you can ask me after. I'm retiring at the end of the school year. So I'm a senior. 25, 25, 25. I cannot wait. Because I want to go back and serve in a new way. And here's why. We're going to talk a little bit about education. And for our purposes today, I'm going to use that term very broadly to be the public provided education that's the bedrock to our democracy. It has undergone so many changes over the about 250 years of our nation's existence. I did not have email or a cell phone when I started teaching. So my dad walked to school and went to a one-room schoolhouse. There were many days he didn't eat. My grandfather was completely illiterate and went to sign up for Social Security. They asked him for a birth certificate and he didn't have one because he was born in the woods. My grandmother had an 8th grade education, never learned how to drive. Back when I was in school, we had big fat textbooks. As soon as they were published, they were outdated, right? And we never even got to barely through World War II, much less Vietnam. Kids used to go home for lunch, things that I am sure rocked education and how it is delivered. When they finally got school buses, phones, recorded sound, the TV, radio, flight, the card catalog, we all remember that. Remember when your teacher would roll in the cart and you were like, woohoo, it's movie day. You could put a lot of things in here about what probably rocked education and changed it dramatically. There's a few things that have never changed. As an education administrator, don't ever try to change the school colors or the mascot. Okay, those don't ever change. We do first hour, second hour, third hour, fourth hour. All the subjects are isolated. Term papers, school boundaries. I get called about that a lot. If you don't know, my office handles that. Like, why do I see the Dunlap school bus go by, but my kid goes to Peoria? I get that call, comes to my office. But then, boom, the 90s happen. You get the internet, you get advanced computing. And I would propose to you that this is the single most radical change that education has ever undergone. When I was a kid, you actually had to go somewhere and look something up. If I wanted to know when the first Battle of Bull Run, which is 1861, because I had to memorize it, it rhymes, you had to go look that up somewhere in an encyclopedia on your shelf that was probably outdated. We learned facts, we learned dates, we memorized stuff because, I'm not exactly sure why, but we did. Now, anything I ever learned in high school and before college and my master's degrees, I can hold in my hand. And I can look it up in under a minute. So has education changed and adapted to this? No. I think you know what my answer is. I would propose that's a big hard no. So I'm standing before you to say that it is a must. And those that will change it must approach the problem differently than me, and that is partially why I am retiring. My brain is wired for the 1900s. It really is that simple. I grew up in a completely different environment. My children are now, they were born in 97 and 2000. My millennial 97 girl is a little more like me, but my 2000s girl never knew anything but a phone. And her brain is different. I cannot, we could stay here forever and describe it, but I think you all know what I'm talking about, especially those of you that have 13 grandchildren. You know they are wired differently. So we need leadership that will forge a new direction. And I do not mean out of the box thinking here. That's not what I'm talking about. We need all new school. What information do you actually need? When information is instantaneous, what do you need to learn? How do you need to learn it? Where do you need to go to learn? How do we change the school year and the school day? Why are juniors and seniors in high school forced to stay on a high school campus when we're telling them we're preparing you for the real world? Have you been back to high school lately? That ain't the real world. The real world is our communities. Why are juniors and seniors still locked on that campus and not allowed to go out? So I'm going to ask you, as I finish my remarks here, what would you change? What's your bold idea? We need to be having these conversations as a community because we learned a lot of things in COVID, right? There's some things that went really, really wrong in education, but but there's some things that went really, really right. And so we swung all the way back here and we took away remote learning. Or yet, wait, maybe we still do. Or maybe you have an e-learning day. My brother teaches at Dunlap Middle, and they lost their air conditioning last week, which don't get me started on that, because I went to Pioneer Junior High in Dunlap, and we never had air conditioning, and we were there every day. So I'm like, oh, brother, cry me a river. They had remote learning for a day. Yeah, you know that. I do. So they had remote learning because they didn't have air conditioning that day. But the rest of the district went to school. Like, why are we not being more creative? So I'm just going to ask you, and I'm going to open up the conversation and see if you have any questions that you want to ask. But I want to add one little tidbit. I don't know if you've noticed, but it's political season. The reason why I'm retiring, being elected, I know it looks glamorous, but it's not all that it's cracked up to be. Education is one of those hot button political topics. I'm very, very serious when I say this. If you read it on social media or on the internets, I guarantee you, if you walk into a public school, you will see what's actually happening. I heard someone accuse something that we were doing in kindergarten, and I was like, so I pulled the standards of what are the standards in kindergarten for teaching them sex ed. The standard for kindergarten is teaching them to be a good neighbor. That's written in paper. That is the adopted state plan. And you read all these inflammatory things online. So I would just, if you read these things, you start to get that fire in your belly and your heart, like, oh my God, these schools, what are they doing to our kids? Just go see. We would love to have you. Of course, we're going to make you sign in, go through the Raptor system to see if you're safe. We're going to make sure that you are not going to do something. It's got to be safe, but we would love to have you there. So just don't assume when you read some of those things. So now the question at hand, what would you change? And do you have any questions for me about your Peoria County schools? Yes, Leah.
How is AI being addressed in the school system?
Denial.
Yeah.
So I have an entire division of my office that is professional learning, and we have been bringing in as many people as possible to use AI. So again, AI, great tool if used its powers for good, right? So there are some incredible apps out there that use AI to help teachers write lesson plans. And I would much rather, I call it cheating fair. I would rather a teacher, so if they have to teach photosynthesis in 7th grade, they can drop in the standard for science, the topic and the grade level, and it puts together an entire PowerPoint for them to be able to teach the next day. I would rather AI do that for them so they can focus on the conversation, the discussion, the inspiration, and then we're having conversations with teachers. All right, the students are going to use it. Tell them to do their term paper on AI first, bring it into the classroom, and use it to do something else. This is what I'm talking about, changing. If I need interview questions for new truancy workers, I get it from ChatGPT. If I need a job description, I'm using it every day, and our kids need to use it, so it's about using its power for good.
Thank you for that. You mentioned the political season. I just would love to get your perspective on school choice.
The regional superintendent's opinion or Beth Crider's opinion? I support public schools. I firmly believe in school choice in the sense that I have a marvelous relationship with the diocese. They were right next to us as we went through the entire season of COVID. Peoria Christian, we do a lot with them. But I do not believe public school dollars should support that. And I know that that is controversial, but I absolutely believe it should be a choice of the family. And it should be an option that is always there. And then that leads to homeschooling. So homeschooling should be an option too if you want to take that on. Just know that there aren't any resources. You have to do that on your own. You can register with my office if you want. You do not have to. There is no mandate. And it just keeps the truancy workers, like if you don't show up at school, but you can homeschool if you want.
Question about school safety. I know when I've gone to a couple high schools that you have to be buzzed in. Are all the doors locked? Is that a rule that all doors are locked? And are they able to see who's at the door before they click the button to unlock it? And how's that
Every
safety?
school, this is the standard. So our new director of school safety was hired with a new federal grant that we just received. He is doing safety site assessments at every single school building in Peoria County. That is looking at your hard target. Every door should be locked. Every door should be numbered. Every school was provided with a grant for a Knox box. A Knox box is out on the perimeter of the school, because we've learned from law enforcement, you don't put the key in a locked box up by the door, because we've had the experience of people hiding on the roof and shooting law enforcement when they get to the school. You put it out at the perimeter so they can get keys immediately to access the school building. We used grant dollars last year to give to all of the Peoria County school districts to put bullet slowing glass. If you know anything about Sandy Hook, you shot out the window and went in. So we've got glass coverings on all your districts. Were given grants to do that this year. That's just the hard targets. We also have an annual school safety meeting. That was in August at Dunlap Valley. All your administrators from Peoria County came to that, and fire and the police sheriff and the police chief, and everyone talks to them. So we're all on the same page. We have, we teach SEL trauma and those kinds of supports to try to reduce violence and get at the prevention side of school violence. We teach behavior threat assessment teams. What is that? We have heard that John has some ideation and that he may have access to guns. We have a standardized FBI trained procedure for behavior threat assessment team, required by law in every school. We do the training. They know what to do. They meet, they assess John's situation and see if it needs to be law enforcement involved, which is partially what went wrong in Georgia. If you followed that case yesterday, he was on the radar a year before. So our training is, if you can prevent that trajectory of violence anywhere within that first year, do it. We would rather be wrong. Sheriff Watkins shared with our team at the safety day that they're getting fewer people calling in saying, oh my God, I'm worried about John. But the ones that do come in are much more serious. And they take all of them seriously. They're coming to your door if you make that kind of a threat. So that's a conversation that we're having with kids. There's a statewide safety line, SAFE #2 help. Kids can text it, call it, online it, all the things to report something like, I think my friend, we have that throughout Peoria County. So we're doing, if you can think of it, we are doing it. We are investing the dollars, but it has taken an unbelievable amount of my time post Sandy Hook that I just didn't see coming.
Hi, Beth. Welcome back.
Hi.
Why do public schools allow social promotion? Because we have too many students coming to college who are not prepared for college, and it's even worse now with COVID, but it happened before COVID too. Why is that allowed to happen?
Oh, it's such a great question, because let's be honest, it really does happen. So it is a really good question. So there's multiple reasons. School districts have their own policy. I can't come in and tell them what their policy is. So it depends on your district, how they handle this. So that's number one. There is no state procedure for promotion. That's number two. Number three, parental pushback. Number four, research best practices, holding a kid back. It doesn't, I mean, I can remember the name of 3 people that were held back in my first grade class at Dunlap Grade School. That right there is very concerning, because that is devastating to a child. So that research. And then last but not least, our largest school system really struggles with this. And if you need to retain over half the kindergartners, that's thousands of children. What do? You're a school administrator, you already don't have enough teachers. So do you hire a whole new set of kindergarten teachers? Well, what happens when you promote them? And so it becomes a logistics question. And last but not least, what should be happening is that when they get, so let's just kindergarten, they get to first grade, they're not reading on grade level. You're supposed to do intensive interventions with those kids. And so you really need quality intervening reading coaches and interventionists that are working with those kids and getting them up to grade level with grade level instruction and the supports they need on the backside. But that is not always the practice. But it does happen, and then the consequences at ICC are catastrophic. That's why Peoria Promise changed all of their rules and regulations, because they were giving out dollars to kids that were taking remedial courses for no credit. And that is just not effective. And there's some new things that they've done at ICC, Sheila Quirk-Bailey has done to really turn that around. And then today I just hosted a meeting with Bradley as a new math course to help kids pass Algebra 2 and geometry, especially if they want to go into careers, and help them pass the trades exam, the ASVAB, and those kinds of things. It's a new math course that they're going to do so that if you're not going to do the college track. That is a hard one. Because if you're not reading by 3rd grade, they build prisons based on 3rd grade reading scores.
So thank you so much for being here. I wish you'd come every year because there's some hope there, at least what I'm hearing from you. So I'm active in my church downtown in Loaves and Fish. It's a feeding program for people in need. And so I see a couple hundred people every week, and a lot of them are children, and they live in the zip code areas that we know about.
050403.
Yeah. And so volunteers talk about what can be done. And I'm old, and I remember my mother being home and all that. And a lot of them don't have that. There may be nobody home when they get home. They often aren't fed. So my question is, from an old guy's perspective, is there any hope for that area? And maybe you have a great idea that we need to assist you with. Thank you.
There is always hope. There is always hope. You should see some of these stories. So I'm going to use one of the hardest kindergartners I ever taught. God, he was a pain. He used to throw things at me. He bit me. I could just go through the list. Difficult kid. And I was a member of Rotary, and I was a 3rd grade reading tutor. And I go down to Roosevelt, at least 4 at a time. I walk in, and guess who my reading buddy is? Oh, it was Kenny. I about died. That is a God wink if there ever was one. And I'm sitting there with Kenny, and his reading was struggling. I was helping him. I'm a reading interventionist by trade, and we were going through that. He just graduated from Peoria High last year. He was on the team that got 2nd place at state, and he went to North Central in Naperville. And if that doesn't give you hope, but what I struggle with, what my personal struggle is you know the story of the starfish, the guy that's throwing the starfish in the ocean, and people say, you can't save them all. You can't throw them all back into the tide. He goes, yeah, but it matters to this one. Unfortunately, sometimes that is our strategy, is that, well, I'll help Kenny, and then I'll help Ashley, and then I'll help John, and trying to systematically approach that, but it's an all hands on deck situation. Because if kids are hungry, and if they're scared, and if they've been on a device all night or they didn't sleep, they're not ready for algebra. Who you really need to have come talk is my husband and tell you what it's like at Peoria High School after someone was murdered last night or after the prom party last spring. I mean, what it takes to, as a staff, show up every day for those kids. We're having to offer courses in secondhand trauma to teachers and administrators and how to take care of yourself, because the burnout is real, but the hope is real as well, because you see those things happen. I wish I had the secret sauce that could make it happen every time. And I just don't. But that's partially why when I retire, I'm going to go back and do the hands-on part of it and substitute teach and those kinds of things, because that's where we need people. Hi, Julie.
Hi, Beth. Thank you for being here today. So when I first moved to Peoria, I went back to my very first career, which was teaching. And I was at the
I didn't know you had a teaching license.
I do. I just renewed it too. But when we moved to Peoria, I was teaching at the Knoxville Center.
Ah, yes.
And, they were very excited to have a business teacher licensed. You're a business teacher. Yes. So, but the thing that I always found very just convoluted was a young person gets arrested. They go to the JDC. They get dropped from District 150's rolls, Aren't they added by limestone? And then when they get out of the JDC, then they come back and they're back on your roster. And that just seems so, yes.
Girl, bye. That is, I've worked so hard on this, so it's called the Orphanage Act. The Orphanage Act is the money that goes to, because technically they become a ward of the state when they're in the JDC. Where is the JDC located? Norwood School District for K-8 and Limestone High School. So when they enroll in there, they become Limestone kids, and the majority of them ain't Limestone kids. So then it becomes a whole situation of transferring them back and forth. And then my favorite part, when they leave the JDC, they're given a packet. Ooh, not a strongly worded packet. Like, we need transitional services, and the teachers there are phenomenal. They're employees of Limestone High School District. The administrator is Limestone. They have worked so hard to make that program what it can be. So now they're implementing some stuff from Peoria with Game Changers and Carl Cannon's program. And I just hired Shelley Cruz, who's a former administrator from Quest. Her husband is Angel Cruz, who works in the Peoria County Jail, who does all their social services. So Shelley's helping me with some of the educational transitions and GED work at the jail. But it's a barrier. We've tried to come up, you can't put computers in there because you can't give them access to the internet. I mean, there's just so many constraints. But that is near and dear to my heart because that frustrates me. You want to get them back on the right track. But the other problem is that leads to, it's all wicked problems. Like, one thing's connected to the other is connected to the other. Kids show up at JDC, they haven't been in school for 3 years. Well, where did you last go to school? Oh, I don't know, I knew it was Tree Wind. Okay, so we try to find their records. We have no idea. There are kids out there, I just found out on Tuesday, we found a kid that hadn't been in for 2 years. And we're finding that all over post-COVID. They kind of just slipped off and they never really went back. So we're hiring 4 new truancy officers to go out and knock on doors and try to find some of these kids. We found, last year we found a family of, we thought it was 5. They hadn't been in school hardly at all that year. We got mom to trust us and found out that the 7 and 10-year-old had never been. So then you talk about social promotion. What do you do? What do you do with a 10-year-old that's never been to school? And I've never been trained in that, and the school's already got enough problems as it is. So what do you do with that child? Do you put them in kindergarten, pre-K? And so those are the kinds of things you try to figure that out and piece it together as best you can. And we're providing, we got a family a washer and dryer last year, and their attendance went to 100%. Little things that we take it for granted.
Hello, my name is Jared.
Hi, Jared.
I just want to go to your 5th point that you had talked about for the social promotion, talking about utilizing AI for good, to be able to handle, allow teachers to have additional time to be able to address their students in the classroom and be able to focus on other topics. But then you also mentioned that there are issues on the back end. If you have half the kindergarten level who is not up to par with their reading skills. As much as I fear AI teaching our children, there are institutions like OSF, shameless plug here, back in late 2020, they had implemented through the Jump Simulation and Training Center, they created a program called STEAM. And it allows online instruction, but also in-person instruction for grades 5 to, I believe, 12. For kids to be able to learn about engineering, science, physics, healthcare, and a few other topics in a different way, but it's also extracurricular. So any areas where kids are not receiving it in the classroom, they're able to do that to enhance their learning. If we're already planning to utilize AI, have you anticipated working with other organizations to develop an AI program to assist those children who are not up to par with their reading levels, to create a program that can give them something, even half an hour during a school day, or something that they could take home to learn?
So this is a double-edged sword. If there is a program, kit, manipulative, Peoria Public Schools has bought it. They had a lot of money flow through their doors with the ESSER funds. And they use those to try to intervene with kids that need it. because the teacher can't handle it. Let me explain it this way. So you do an assessment at the beginning of the year, you figure out where all the kids are at, then you tailor your instruction to that. And I go to this training, the first year we're using the assessment. They're like, okay, 80% of your kids are gonna be green, meaning they're on grade level. 15% of the kids are gonna be yellow, which means they're gonna need some extra help. And 5% of the kids are gonna be red, like, oh my gosh, we really have to help this kid. So I assessed the class and 60% of my kids were red. And I go back to and I'm like, trainer, you said that this would, so I'm the teacher, like, what do I do? So we had kit upon kit upon kit that I could pull down and say, okay, this group needs this kind of instruction and this group needs this. Or there's Waterford, and I can't think of all the names of them on the computer, that takes them through various, but you can't beat a teacher in the classroom, especially with a kid that has a lot of social emotional needs, because most likely, I'd even put it 9 times out of 10, poverty is the reason that they show up at kindergarten, they don't know what their name is. I'm not kidding. They don't know what their name is. They've never held a writing utensil. They don't know how to eat at a table. And they're sitting next to a kid whose mom read to them every night. Kindergarten is hard. It's my favorite, but it's hard because you have those variety of experiences and they need a live human being. State of Illinois actually mandates it at this point. We all were forced to go to remote learning, and they're like, everybody back to the classroom, 5.5 hours in person. So we've got to find the right balance. Some kids thrive on that. Some kids thrive on pencil paper. Some kids need just the physical human being there. We got to tailor it. They need all the tools we got to do a tool in the toolkit approach, if that makes sense. But I do like the AI thing. It's putting them in front of one more device too, because I know that's what they're doing at night. So you got to balance that too.
Beth, thank you for
Hi, Mr.
being
Hesse.
here. You brought back some wonderful memories.
By saying Pioneer Junior High?
Yes. My name is Brock Hesse. My wife Shirley was a teaching coach for 3rd graders at Dunlap Grade School. Your father was the principal of Dunlap Grade School. And she worked with children and taught them to read. About a year ago, I was coming out of a doctor's office and I was walking across the parking lot and somebody behind me said, Mr. Hessing, you dropped your Social Security card in the office. I said, thank you very much, I'll go get it. She had her son with her and she said, no, my son will go get it for you. And while he was retrieving the card, she said to me, is your wife named Shirley? And I said, yes. She said, when I was in 3rd grade, I could not read. I was a terrible reader. But your wife taught me how to read. She taught me how to read. And today, I'm a 3rd grade teacher.
Love that story. And an important piece of that story is, if you go back to, I entered the school, my dad was principal at Dunlap High School when it was built where it is now. I'm old Dunlap, new Dunlap, I don't understand new Dunlap. I never had a delivered pizza until I went to college. True story. Kids dropped out all the time. We think that, oh my gosh, we got to go back to something. We got to go back and make something great. Well, kids dropped out all the time back then, but you could get a job. You could work in a factory or at work. So my entire family is that. My dad's the only one of 5 brothers that got a high school diploma. Some of them got their GED eventually and went to the military. My dad's the only one with a college degree. So now down my family's legacy, education changed the trajectory of my family forever. But you could go into the military, you could go get some kind of job. So it's not that it's so much worse now, it's just we have to take everyone We have to take everyone. And so those numbers are all on the books. Those kids are not walking away, they're not dropping out. So our education numbers definitely struggle. I know we're running out of time. I don't even know. Is there another question, or if you gotta go, or I don't know how your club rules. You're still wild. I see they made a naughty table. When Brent left, I said, Brent, I see they made a naughty table just to corral y'all over there.
We can probably take one more.
Okay. Really?
Yeah. Okay. First of all, thanks for coming, Beth. We've greatly appreciated it. One more thing that I would like for you to tell the group, what are the qualifications to be a substitute teacher?
I was so thrilled. I have never been asked in public how to become a substitute teacher. And I went through your greeting line and she asked me. So there are multiple layers of being a sub. So if you have kids that are in college, okay, when they come back on their breaks, we would love to have them. So you register online on a system called ELIS. And John has my email. I can give this to you in written form. So if you have a high school diploma, you can be a teaching assistant sub. If you have 90 hours, you can be a teaching sub. And if you have a 4-year degree in any field, you can substitute. And it's an easy online registration system with a small fee. You get a background check and voila. And then my local school districts do it all differently. So you don't actually come out of my office to do that, but you would do it in your local districts. And subs are definitely a need. But seriously, if you have college kids in your family, when they're back on their break and want to do that, it's a great way to earn. The pay is not too bad right now. They've upped it significantly. So we would love to have you.